Hey, fantastic. Hey, everybody. It's Dr. Maureen Hayes from Galveston, Texas, welcoming you to our Friday night Asea 5. You know some of the regulars, Dr. Lee Osler from Washington State, Jim and Ann Glenn from San Antonio, Texas. Jim is our financial expert and Ann is our nutritional expert. Dr. Lee Osler is a dentist supreme up there. And we have a couple of special guests joining us today. We have Dr. Richard Michals from North Carolina and Dr. Ahvie Herskowitz from San Francisco. He's the director of Anatomy Medicine there. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Dr. Herskowitz. He's got extensive medical training, which includes a medical degree from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, residencies in pathology, internal medicine, and cardiology, with training at Johns Hopkins Medical Center. Most recently, he was a clinical professor of medicine at University of California, San Francisco, and has over 3 decades where he has studied molecular and immunological mechanisms of inflammation, autoimmunity, ischemia, heart transplantation, and congestive heart failure. He's an avid athlete and has been using and recommending Asea for the past 5 years. So welcome, Dr. Ahvie Herskowitz.
Hi.
Hi.
Did you memorize all of that, Maureen?
What's that?
Did you memorize all of that, or were you reading? Oh, you cheated.
I have to cheat. He's just got too much on his bio. It's too impressive. I would have left something out. So, Jim, I'm going to let you introduce Dr. Michals.
Dr. Michals, I know that you're from my grandfather's alma mater, which is Duke. And that immediately earns a whole bunch of gold stars for me because I absolutely adored my grandfather who played football at Duke back in the 30s. So, Dr. Michals, you have been a loyal friend and a huge advocate for these molecules, and you've always been able and willing to help us share these molecules. You own your own clinic. Now, where exactly are you in North Carolina?
I'm in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. We're about an hour east of Raleigh-Durham.
Okay. And you have your own medical clinic, correct?
Yes, sir. In fact, I'm here now because my internet at home is on the blitz because of storms. So this is not a fake background. This is not fake. I'm actually in my office.
Fake background, by the way.
This is where I do my consults with my now newly started concierge practice. And I'm excited about it because I'm now unleashed, if you will, because of the lack of insurance issues, to actually track some things like inflammatory markers and other advanced lipid markers that before we just were handcuffed. So it's an exciting new practice of medicine. I'm sitting where my patients sit when I'm consulting with them. And so, but yes, sir, the main practice over 35 years. We have over 70 employees, and it's a fairly substantial operation.
Explain to concierge real quick. What does that mean versus what you were doing a couple of months ago?
Yeah, this is a practice that is for folks who honestly don't like to sit waiting more for their doctor than seeing their doctor. It's where we look at things beyond the standard markers. I kind of liken it to looking under all the stones, not just one, to enhance a person's health. You know, there are so many facets of health, and honestly, if we confine ourselves to just one or two things, we'll miss a lot. You know, there's a lot of things in life that want to carry people away from a really good fishing hole. The fishing hole is the health fishing hole. It's where the fish jump onto your hook with no bait. And, you know, any good fisherman says, I'm marking this spot, but the current wants to take you away. And, you know, you can only cast so far. But if a good fisherman will say, hey, I'm going to throw an anchor down. Now, do I need one heavy anchor, two heavy anchors? If you don't know what makes up that current that's trying to take you away from your health spot, then you'll never know. And that includes the patient and the physician. So I'm excited. I get to spend more time with the patients. We get to talk about things. I love teaching. I taught medical students for many, many years. And so for me, it's a brand new injection of just doing what I really have enjoyed doing all these years. I just have the time and now have the passion to do it. And quite honestly, I'm learning more and more about non-pharmaceutical approaches that can enhance people's health and keep them in that fishing hole where they're just jumping on the hook.
Interesting.
Yeah, you know what's so fascinating about that is that I think a lot of doctors are moving towards that. Dr. Ahvie, your practice is concierge as well, isn't it? And integrative.
Yeah, for the past 10 years or so, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, do you want to speak a little bit to that, what it frees you up to do as far as taking care of your patients? And my story is that when I got involved with Asea, I was actually in training for concierge medicine. It's kind of the way a lot of us are going so that we can take a more holistic approach. So if you could speak to that in your practice too.
Surely. Thank you, Maureen. So I'm neither a poet like Dr. Michal is, and nor am I a fisherman, having been raised in New York City where we didn't go fishing a lot, but that was a tremendous poetic description. So this morning, I had a patient who's been on recently put on Asea, but he was an elderly gentleman, a titan of industry, so to speak, a CEO type, who's losing cognitive function. And I spent 3 hours with him today, actually digging into all, and then having him be seen by a senior neurologist that actually did another sophisticated exam that I was able to learn from, because we just have the ability to function on that level. So if something is interesting as well as good for the patient, we're able to learn more, we're able to teach more. So me, from a cardiology background, I could say that right now, maybe 20% of the patients that I see are cardiac patients or heart-related patients. The majority of people are interested in understanding where they stand, really, where am I in this health map, so to speak, that I want to draw for myself. I'm not getting the information other than, everything seems to be within range from my even sophisticated annual exams. I have this symptom or that symptom, and a lot of things fall through the cracks. Whether it's I can't lose weight, or I can't sleep through the night, or I just don't feel energized any longer, which I think is now fatigue and stress are the number one symptoms that we see today. So, and particularly in today's world. So, I have the ability, just like Dr. Michal now has, and you were training to have, as to this. So for me, Asea is useful as a tool in a toolbox, both therapeutically, because it can essentially, the way it acts, as we can get into later, it can serve everyone, and also diagnostically, because if you're magically affected, literally as you drink it for the first time, it gives me information about you, and I'd say maybe half or so, or a little bit more of the people are under that bucket, whereas others don't feel it, but we look for things that are markers, called biomarkers, over the course of the first few months.
That's fascinating. So you're looking for biomarkers while they're on Asea, or just in a whole range of treatment plans?
Well, yeah, a whole range. I think, to me, there are certain things you can provide certain patients with that make everything better. And Asea is so foundational and so fundamental that this is one of those types of therapies that are, it's not common. This is not an everyday phenomenon where you could give someone, say, take this magic sauce here, and you will, everything that I'm thinking about needs to be adjusted or needs to be optimized, will will get there faster. So it's one of these foundational things, sort of like vitamin D. You know, certain things are foundational, are allow you to modulate your system, your communications network. This is so foundational, and I think we have a number of experts on the line that can speak to that, and and I'll be happy to join in.
You know what? I love that. And somebody just put, can Asea post at least 25 to 50 of the doctors in their field to show the talent Asea has on board? And what a great idea, because there are so many of us who are such big proponents of this product. And just as a disclaimer, this is not a medical product. It's not meant to diagnose or treat anything. What it does is it works at the cellular level. It helps your cells to do their job better. So when Dr. Michals or Dr. Herskowitz are talking about their therapies, that's putting gas in the tank of your vehicle. And we're actually, with these molecules, helping at the engine, right? Making the engine work correctly so that everything good you do for the body works better, or maybe faster, or enhances the benefits. And so that's why it's so foundational. And this is something, if you don't mind, because we have a lot of new people on here, if you could just talk maybe or speak to how the redox molecules work in the body, or why they're so important, and why we should replenish them. Both of you, Dr. Ahvie, if you want to go first, and then Dr. Michals.
Well, again, I give a less poetic set of descriptions, but since we don't really have an easy gauge, a fuel gauge, we don't have a good understanding of how to measure the electrical circuitry like we do when we take our car into the shop. We understand that there are basic cellular functions that create energy. So you have to have coal that goes into the fire, and the more efficient that is, the more heat you'll generate. But there are a number of sets of systems that are billions of years old, that start with yeast and go all the way up to humans, that have evolved over time to allow the system to regulate itself instantly. And this requires a communications network inside the cells and inside the fuel sort of pods of each of the cells called mitochondria. So these are the reduction oxidation molecules that are responsible to maintain that balance and maintain the engine to be running smoothly. It also, one other thing that I would add to your description, Maureen, it also helps control the exhaust, because the more heat you generate, the more byproducts you generate, and you have to be able to neutralize the exhaust and get rid of it efficiently and so on. So these molecules, these conductors, so to speak, of this system that watch over it and maintain a balance, are responsible for not only the production of energy and the efficiency, but also handling the exhaust.
Fabulous. That was awesome. And I'm going to invite our poet to come speak, because I know he has a great way of talking about how different things, and if you don't mind, your analogy, Dr. Michals, to dancers, speak a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, we need everybody on this call probably lives in a town, a city, a village, somewhere, right? And some of those places are small. Some of them are like Sims, North Carolina, 200 people. Some are in large cities. I've been to many of the cities for my Aussie friends. I've been to some of your cities, beautiful cities, large. My Filipino friends, but in my city's kind of just a smaller one. But think about where you live. You need a power source. Can you imagine no electricity right now? We aren't communicating very well. No electricity. You need power. You need, as Dr. Ahvie said, you need transportation networks. Can you imagine trying to get from one place to another, even to get your food, where you don't have a path, you don't have road transport? You've got to have a transportation network that you can go by. You've got to have hey, listen, when there's bad things going on, what do? You call your emergency network and you try to get the people who can help out in an emergency, right? They've got to be able to get that communication. You've got to get the garbage from one place to another. Otherwise, your garbage piles up. Who wants to live in an area like that where the garbage is everywhere, right? So all of those different jobs and all of those different things that make your village, your city, your community work well, they all require communication. Well, our cells are just like that. They are really little cities, and they have little compartments anatomically and biochemically that work in these different ways. And yet, just like your cell phone, with 4 bars, this thing is amazing. With great communication, our cells work very efficiently. They work the way they're really supposed to, optimally. But with a lack of that signaling, everything kind of gets screwed up a little bit and it gets less optimized. And then, so maybe it's the trash backs up. Maybe things are happening in your community that you would say, that's nefarious. Where are the people who are supposed to be protecting us? Why are these rogue things happening? We need help. So at any rate, this is how I see the cell signaling benefits of what you see on the screen, the Asea product line. But part of the other part of that is, as Maureen said, that's that. Think of a dance partners. Close your eyes for just a second. Many of us, it's been a long day, so close your eyes for just a second. And do you hear that ballroom music? It's wonderful. You can hear it's floating. And then you open your eyes and you see this couple going across the dance floor. And they're magnificent. Their moves are spot on. They are just floating across the dance floor. And it's wondrous. It's wondrous to see that combination working. Well, now let's take one of those partners out. You hear the same music. That one person who's a professional is dancing. But it doesn't look the same, does it? It really doesn't look the same. Because you need both partners to be working together. And quite honestly, Asea, they are the leaders in cellular health in the world. And folks, we've been talking about this breakthrough thing of the cell signaling, but there's a nutritional line as well. And to have both of those things working in concert is incredibly, incredibly powerful. Cell signaling is wonderful, but as Dr. Ahvie pointed out, vitamin D. Now, if you have a vitamin D deficiency, what do you need? Vitamin D. If you have problems because you're a workaholic like some of us, and you don't get enough sleep, that's a problem. I joke with patients and people I put on recommend Asea to. It's wonderful. Athletes use it. But guess what? It does not tie your sneakers for you. So let's keep all of that in mind, folks. This is a balance in life. And what Asea brings that into crystal sharp focus is that balance that we need.
Cool.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Osler, you put something out on Facebook a couple of days ago regarding NRF2/ the immune system. Now, I understand you are also a concierge doctor, correct?
I am a dentist.
Well, I know you're a dentist. You're a concierge dentist then.
An oral doctor.
In trying to connect the systemic health to other parts, where do all the diseases enter the body? And didn't that kind of strike you very fascinating?
Well, the mouth is a significant portal of entry for disease in the body, and we're learning more about that. That's called the oral systemic connection. We've had information on that for a long time and understand that if you have periodontal disease, for example, that's just one of the oral things, you're going to get biofilm-induced inflammation enter the body, and it increases the whole body burden, we call it, of inflammation or systemic inflammation, which can have many downstream effects in heart disease and brain disease and diabetes and obesity. There's just a lot of links. And so as a dentist, that's one of our focuses in oral health, is to shut the door. We want to close the portal of entry for these bacteria so that they cannot get into the body. I mean, when you think about what a microbe is, it doesn't have arms and legs that can take itself to the bathroom. And so it just produces its own little environment of, I'll introduce the word poop and pee, because that's really what it is, in its own little biofilm. And when that's underneath the gum tissue, for example, then that strips the protective barrier skin away, and all that toxic stuff then mounts an immune or inflammatory response that can get through the body. One of the things that I didn't write about in that post was just the NRF2 levels that are in infected gum tissue. We've got good research that shows that people that have chronic gum disease, for example, and you might say, well, that's not a big deal, but it really is. But the tissues of people that have chronic gum disease, for example, have low levels of NRF2 signaling or NF2 transcription, and they have low levels of redox signaling. And so that it's just an interesting correlation, and I would assume that that is true to any part of the body. If you've got infection or just discord in any other part of the body, there's going to be inflammation, and those tissues are going to be challenged with regards to how to activate, the healing process.
Well, Lee, I couldn't agree more. We live in an inflammatory time, so all of us are subject to this degree of inflammation and injury from that type of state that we're in. And for the lay folks, it's largely a function of, I think, oral health, which is relatively poor across the board in developed countries. But our diet is very fundamental to this level of inflammation that's going on. So our processed foods, the chemicals that are put on the food and into the food and so on, the genetically modified foods and so on. So we have an inflammatory lifestyle as well. So we generally don't sleep enough, and we just generally don't exercise enough. So we need boosters of this type of the buffering of the system. So NRF2 is one of these signaling, one of these major signalers that tell the body how to repair these sites of inflammation and how to orchestrate it. But NRF2 is also signaled by redox molecules. So these things that go hand in hand is just one of one is upstream and one of them is downstream, but they're all linked. So the more NRF2, which you're an expert in, the better. And our redox molecules should give us a significant boost in that direction. And who needs that direction? I can't emphasize enough that everybody does. There isn't a single person I know, whether you're the gold medal winner from the prior Olympics or you're someone who's just trying to stay healthy relatively well and age gracefully. This is our reality. So anything that has a fundamental impact on this ability to buffer inflammation in the body is going to be, one of the pillars of a healthy strategy.
Now, Dr. Ahvie, you mentioned earlier on about how that there's a lot of people under stress. Exactly what does stress do to the body? And then how can these redox molecules help in the repair of that? Because I've seen people that I talk, like we have a doctor that lives down the street, and he said, well, I'm in my 50s. I go, hey, I'm healthy in his mid 50s. And I go, how do you know? And how would you respond to someone like that?
Well, since there aren't great and easy explanations and markers, so that's why it's generally poorly understood by the medical community. But there's obviously, everyone thinks about stress as emotional stress. I'm talking about physiological, the stress on every cell of the body that to maintain its function. So every cell has its own lifespan and life cycle. Our cells are aging in a more accelerated fashion because of this inflammatory lifestyle, because we're working too hard, because we don't exercise, because we're under this 24/7 mentality. So it's like the difference between living your life, having a bear run after you all the time, versus living a life that at least provides some balance on that. It gives you some balance. And we generally are in the stressful side of life in general. And frankly, our food supply is one of the major drivers of that as well. So I'm not moved by Krispy Kreme donuts giving 18 million donuts to first line COVID people, because it's just not the right perspective of where we need to be as a society, where we have certain wake-up calls that are found today. But yeah, we live a physiologically stressful life, and that's what I'm trying to say. Well, what do I need to put all my patients on 12 different supplements depending on what they're truly deficient in? And yes, Asea does not convert vitamin D levels to normal. You need to take that. At the same time, it's so foundational and so fundamental that this is the way the cells have evolved to function better. So this is why I recommend it to the majority of people who have the resources to use it.
Now, Lee, you brought this up, so I'm going to transfer it to Dr. Michal. Lack of sleep, but then also, could you explain a little bit, please, about leaky gut, leaky brain, since Lee brought up the poop comment? Sorry, Lee.
You knew it was coming.
You knew it was coming. We always have to do that. But the lack of sleep in the majority of Americans are very much sleep deprived. What effect does that have on the body? And then again, could you please, all four of you, maybe touch on this leaky gut, leaky brain issue that I understand the majority of people in this country are dealing with? Dr. Michal?
Well, without getting highly technical, let me just bring it down to maybe something that a lot of people can identify with. Tomorrow morning or tomorrow evening, whatever, go out to your car and take the alternator off, and then just drive it around a little while. And I think before too long, you're going to end up being somewhere that you don't want to be, calling for help. And you're going to wonder, gee whiz, that's a new battery, and everything was just fine a little while ago. My car was in perfect health. But it won't be in perfect health for very long, because your battery is being recharged by that alternator and that apparatus, and it has to be hooked up properly. And if it isn't, you're going to have a problem with your battery losing charge. And when your battery loses charge, really, how viable is that vehicle then? It's not going to be serving the purpose you meant for it to serve. So, we've talked about a lot of different things that comprise a healthy spot to be in our lives. And sleep is one of them, Jim. I mean, again, and one of the things that amazed me, and I think people on the call need to understand, I've only been involved with Asea just barely 3 years. All those books behind me, I didn't know anything about redox signaling. Now, because of my profession and my mental training and inquisitiveness, I bought that stuff because I had to try to figure this out, because this is a big part of of the medical literature now. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of articles, okay? So the point being is that, you know, one of the things that struck me is I heard people, and when I looked at the genetics study, and, you know, there are studies using Asea, which is wonderful. But, you know, it deals with circadian pathways. And quite honestly, when you hear just about everybody saying, I sleep better, I sleep better, I sleep better, I sleep better. Well, that's important. And if we're not, now, if we're just burning the candle and we're doing too much, and I'm not setting myself up to have good sleep habits and sleep hygiene, then that's on me. But I can tell you, folks, there's a lot of people that try to do the right things. And the last thing, honestly, I want to do now is give somebody something that could really hook them. Don't want to do that. And I'm going to tell you something, folks. Asea, non-toxic. Non-toxic. You can't, it won't interact with medications. And so, you know, this is an amazing thing that gives people improved sleep. And we think we're beginning to uncover why. And I think that's exciting. You know, that's part of the research and ongoing commitment of this company to really investigate. You know, we're at the tip of the iceberg, folks. The tip. And it's an exciting time for us who are involved with caring for patients. But it's a wonderful thing to be able to think, here's something that you can utilize to help sleep patterns.
Do you mind going over real quick? And I sort of forgot about this, but it wasn't like a patient brought this technology to you, correct? You kind of found out about it from a pretty serious situation. Do you mind sharing that with us, sir?
Sure. I'll try to make it the concise. It won't be poetic. It was actually, it's a wonderful story because of the ending, but it wasn't a wonderful story in the beginning. And it was involving my grandkids. You know, they had challenges, various ones, due to tick-borne things. And but it culminated in one, Gideon. At age 13, I get a call. I'm ready to see my morning patients. We had seen them 2 days before Christmas. They came to our house. Everybody was doing fine. 2 days later, I get a call from my daughter, and she gives me symptomatology over the phone. Immediately, I said, because of where they live, they're very hard to find in the country. And I just said, get him in the car, take him immediately down the road, 15 minutes to a pediatric emergency room. He needs to get there ASAP. He went there. He was transferred that very same day after a few hours of investigation to my alma mater, Duke. Now, he spent 5 weeks in Duke. You never want to be the star patient at a medical referral hospital. You just don't want to be that person, okay? He was. And when he left, really even the brightest of the brightest of the brightest. And they went out, they took soil samples, they did everything, okay? He received top care, and they really had no answers. Now, fast forward, he had all sorts of challenges involving brain challenges, okay? And they were really having to cope with rearranging their house. Where are we going to put him? Where are we going to physically locate him so that he can deal with these challenges? They tried all sorts of supplements, all sorts of things, and nothing was working. And through, I believe, God's providence, you know, my daughter was sharing prayer requests. Please pray for my family. This is the situation. A fellow student from high school reached out to her, said, my mom has a brain problem. It's not the same thing as describe your kid, but she's drinking this stuff, and she not supposed to be here anymore, but she is, and she's thriving. Maybe it'll help your kid. So eventually he did get that. It's one person telling one person telling one person. I think that's through this is a very important thread that I just can't highlight enough. But, within 4 weeks of taking this, he's starting to make major, major improvements. And so did the other kids with their challenges. And I'll never forget, we were going to celebrate her birthday. This is a family now. She just had they had their 10th kid. They've adopted 3. Gideon was one of the adopted kids. You're celebrating birthdays all the time with a big family. And I was asked to, we were going there. Hey, Dad, somebody's going to share something about what this is doing for Gideon. Do you mind? I said, are you kidding? Because I felt helpless. I felt helpless as a grandpa and as a doctor. It made it even worse. And for those of you out there listening to this, feeling helpless, maybe feeling helpless, or maybe even hopeless, here's the story, and this is the wonderful ending. This has changed their lives. My daughter says she has her family back. And you know what? I'm a busy doctor. I'm doing traditional medicine, writing prescriptions. I really don't have time for extra, look at this, look at that. I mean, honestly. And that stopped me in my tracks. And that made me buy those things back there and begin to investigate this. And it's been a wonderful journey. Thanks for asking about it. I think it's just a testimony to one person thinking enough about another person to share that story, because at any point, this is not something I knew about. I wasn't going to be able to help my own grandkid, but I'm going to tell you something. I'm trying to share that story with other people. And I don't even know the lives that other people are going to touch, because maybe I'm touching a few right now. And folks, you do not have to be a doctor. That's the thing. We're blessed because of our background, our training. But you know what? You do not have to be a doctor to make these recommendations, because it's not a pharmaceutical product. Isn't that brilliant? Isn't that brilliant that you can play a role in helping other people just by sharing out of love, out of concern, what you learn? And really, I mean, seriously, if you're just looking at this for the first time, get with the person that brought you to this, because they can help you along this path. It's amazing. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Ahvie, if you don't mind, your path is different to Asea. Do you mind sharing why and how that transpired, and what did both of you, well, all 4 of you are brilliant, but what was it that made you switch and start putting some of your patients on these molecules?
Oh, well, I came from an academic background, so I ran a lab that was a molecular immunology lab, and ultimately looked at the immune system and heart function and whatnot. But so I was always looking for foundational strategies for cellular function. And then I went into private practice from the university setting. And so I had tested about a half a dozen different strategies out there. Some of them were water products that, hydrogen waters and so on, other things. I came across a technology that showed some promise, and then the company decided to go pharmaceutical. And so I had no more access to it. And then I came across one of the brilliant members of Dr. Maureen Hayes' team, Masami Handloff, and I met her at a sort of I think a medical fair in San Francisco area, and those of you that know her know how enthusiastic she is, and she's got a great personal story. I wasn't moved by her story as much as others may be, because I'm a skeptic, but I did just take a slug of it right then and there when I met her, because she carries this around. I mean, she carries, samples around. So, and I'm one of the ones that can feel something that felt something right away. And I understood that was, to me, pretty remarkable. And so I went back home and gave it to my son, who was aspiring to become captain of the football team, and then gave it to my other son, and then started using it in the practice. And those folks that had an effect with, when they feel better, they know it, because they were feeling poorly. Then we started getting their stories on board and so on. So it just evolved over time. And as some of you may know, I'm president of an organization that has around 500 integrative doctors. So Maureen and I and Masami have touted this at those types of meetings, and it's not common for me to do that. And there's a few things I want to emphasize. First of all, the science is clearly there. The science will emerge over time, because we're now interested in prevention more than ever. But also, it does come up. It's driven, the success of this, as in any one of our given lives, is a function of storytelling. It's not about, no one's going to be blown away by me giving you PDF files of the 25 articles that you can show. They're going to be impressed by the stories, and the stories are true, and they're real. These are not placebo. These are not junkyard stories. They're real, fundamental, and timely. So when you get that into your system, and you have benefits that you see for yourself, and you have other people thanking you for inviting them into this sort of family, you realize that not everything comes from Duke or Hopkins or from Mayo Clinic. There are things that are not in their portfolio. And this is one of them, because it's not a pharmaceutical, okay. And so on. So,
okay, you guys are all doctors. I would like to know, for Dr. Michal, actually all of you, if possible, what about the network marketing aspect of it? Did that go, no way, Jose? What made you look at this once you realized that it's networking? Dr. Herskowitz?
Well, for me, it was not. It's not the main gig. So I have, 2 full-time jobs and so on. So, but I'm quite intrigued by this being a rational decision. If I decided to make it into a full-time gig, I could do it, and I could crush it. But
why don't you then?
Well. I want to stay I want to stay as in the conductor role for the time being. That's why. So I learn things that I could never learn other than the way I do things. So the way I treat people in my particular center. So I'm going to keep on doing it for the time being this way. But I think it really is an interesting, and this is not a trivial thing. I've thought about it for a number of times, because Maureen does it very, very elegantly, and others on the call do it as well. But I think it is a very interesting option. Now, I didn't know anything about network marketing world, because I had never been involved with it, and I have a lot of patients that tell me, "Oh, this is network marketing," and I said, "Well, if you trusted me to treat you very seriously, then either you trust me to take it or not, and that's up to you. But if you do, then I can entrust you with my recommendation that this will be a helpful thing for you." So that's where I am.
Dr. Michal, how did you deal with that? Or did you really care because of what it did to your grandson?
The only thing I knew was what I learned that night at a meeting with Ed and Rebecca Weeds, Paul and Fred Logis. And Dick Walker on the Zoom. And basically it was this. Somehow it's involved. This is how this is brought to market. This is not, you're not going to hear about it in the radio, TV, newspapers. Okay, maybe that's why I've never heard of it, I guess. It had to be word of mouth. And, but somehow, if I thought this was worthy of using, that somehow it would help my daughter. I don't know how that worked, but that was the basic idea, I guess. It was a novel way. I've been a business entrepreneur my whole life. So that part was appealing because, when you are when you're running your own show, it is, it's up to you. But the thing that was intriguing about this was, you didn't have to go to 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, your residency program, and then kind of get through it and hope you did the business right. There were actually people that are there helping you. And it's actually mutually aligned incentives. And the bottom line is, as some people have said that I've heard, is, you get paid in goosebumps. Well, when your grandkids are doing better, that's goosebumps. And somebody was getting paid for that. But what a wonderful thing. And yeah, it's a different form of business, no question about it. But I have met I've met some wonderful people I would have never met before. So, it's building a family of relationships that's certainly there. So, I think at some point, especially with this company, what I've learned from people who've been involved in this form of business before, that this company is unique. And I, don't have time to go into that. And I'm probably not the person to actually do that piece, but it's, who you align yourself with, folks, is important. And this is a great company. I've gotten a chance to look a little bit behind the curtain, and it's really a fascinating thing. So, meandering a little bit about this one because I just had no real experience with it. But what I've learned so far is that it's a way to bless people, not just health-wise, but a lot of people are challenged financially, and there's not another business I know of that you can get in for such a low amount of money in, and the risk is like very minimal, really, and you do have to put some work into it, but you have other people helping you. It's just an amazing business concept, I think.
Yeah, as an ex-stockbroker, we didn't have any experience in this, but when I read that Warren Buffett calls this one of the best investments I've ever made, if you look at the track record of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's companies, you'll know real quick when he says it's one of the best investments I've ever made. Good enough for me. Lee, may I ask you about epigenetics? Because I want people to understand, because again, I still say that a lot of people think, well, I'm doing fine. But can you please, this new terminology, the epigenetics, and what that is doing to our genes inside of our body, and then by adding these molecules back into the body, does that do anything to our genes in our body?
That's a great question. And one of the comments earlier in the chat was about whether or not this was important or not. And you're really striking on what is important. I love, in answer to your other question about network marketing, that was a chicken bone sideways in my throat. It was really tough, and for reasons we won't get into. But the understanding of why this company did what it did, and that this is so unique because of where it plays in the health marketplace and the broader marketplace. That's a story that needs to be told. People can watch the Genesis video at amazingmolecules.com and really get a good background of why this is going down the path business-wise that it is. In fact, I know for health professionals, that's kind of an important idea to understand. But the whole epigenetic thing, we've had this thing since the genome thing came out, that we are our DNA, and if you've got a gene for cancer, then you're condemned, and if you've got a gene for that or whatever, and in some cases they're fixed, and you can't change your eye color and your skin color because those are pretty determined in the DNA. But everything else is about gene expression, whether you turn a gene on or turn a gene off. And so I like to think of the DNA code as like a gun or a pistol, and your finger is on the trigger. That's the environment. Whether you pull the trigger or not and express the bullet, as it were, is a function of what the environment is doing. And so epigenetics is a term that just means the overlay or the influence of your environment on the DNA. It's obviously way more complicated than a 3-minute answer. But the point of this goes back to NRF2. The reason why Asea has such a great place in the world's marketplace, in the health marketplace, is because we're replenishing molecules that the mitochondria normally makes when it goes through its oxidative process of making energy. Ahvie talked about the exhaust earlier. We manage the energy production, but we've also got exhaust. And for decades, we've taken antioxidant vitamins to donate electrons to put out the fire that's produced with these reactive oxygen molecules. We've done that for decades, and it's a good thing. They're all plant-based when they're diet supplied. But inside the body, the cell has a way to identify when the cell is not healthy, when there's oxidative imbalance. It's a teeter-totter between oxidation and reduction, the transfer of electrons. The way the cell talk or cell communication signals or communications is through the movement of electrons from one molecule to the next. And without getting too deep into that rabbit hole, the point is the way that the cell knows how to respond to its environment is through this signaling. It has to turn on or turn off genes. And NRF2 is an antioxidant signaling transcription factor. It's what goes to the DNA in the nucleus and sits on the chromosome of the genes in our DNA and tells it which proteins to produce as a result of what upstream problems there were. So if you're sick, if you've got infection, if you're any kind of oxidative stress, that pathway codes the gene to build proteins called glutathione, superoxide dismutase, and catalase, the 3 primary major intracellular antioxidants, so that they can come back into the cell and rebalance the teeter-totter. When the teeter-totter balance is balanced, then the cell can be healthy. And so this whole concept, the reason why Asea is positioned so well is that it is the only company in the world that owns all the patents and all the ability to make these same signaling molecules in a laboratory, stabilize them. We drink them or put them on our skin, they're absorbed, and I can replenish or fill up the cell of the deficit that we're not making because we're getting older or we're sicker. And when we do that, then the cell can heal itself naturally. That's what's important about this.
Leah, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really good.
Real quick, 2 comments as we're getting close to the end. So, it couldn't go any other way but network marketing. We know it couldn't go pharmaceutical. It's not going to be something you have that blue bottle at GNC on the shelf, because it takes this kind of webinar and us sharing our stories to educate people. And if they would just try it for 90 days, that's what we recommend, minimum 90 days, let your cells regenerate, give it at least that much time. And then the other comment, we're going to have Carmen Keith in 4 weeks, and she says if you're waiting for your doctor to tell you to try Asea, you probably won't make it, because the average person lives to, I think she said 76. And so, it's your health. You need to take it back. Be proactive, as I teach, and just decide to try it. It's the safest thing out there. So why not just do what your body is designed to do and get healed?
Now, I want to make sure everybody knows that Maureen's not drinking champagne.
No,
was that champagne there? Looks like champagne to me.
I wish. No, it's a Pellegrino. I thought I probably looked like Elizabeth Warren.
Sure, Maury. Hey, Ahvie, real quick, you mentioned that you had a rapid response, right? Yeah. Okay, what if you don't? Does that mean it's not working for me?
No, absolutely not. So I think to the point that was just made, that Ann just made, that a minimum time is a reasonable minimum time for you to actually notice an effect is 3 months, and that because it's still working on a cellular level whether you have an immediate response or not.
Yeah.
This stuff has to be in every cell. So if you have more of it, all the better. So it's so fundamental. So 3 months is a reasonable amount of time, but some of us can actually sense it right away, and many of the athletes do so, and that's why they're highly motivated, because they have to fit in a lot of different strategies. But that's what I would agree with Ann on that.
Yeah.
And Dr. Ward says, 3 things that will make the redox work even better is plenty of regular good water. You need at least 64 ounces a day of H2O, and exercise, and of course, as I teach, a good, healthy, clean diet. Those will make the redox work better, and that's why our source is so awesome, because all our source line gives us the nutrients we need.
The more good you can do for your body, the more benefit you're going to see from the redox molecules. I tell people, if you're just sitting on the couch with a Big Mac in one hand and a clicker in the other, those molecules might be working hard just to keep you alive. But the more that you can do, like Dr. Ahvie and Dr. Lee and Dr. Richard were all talking about, with the clean diet and the sleep and the exercise and the vitamin D, all of these things are so important. And your gut, we didn't get into that a lot. All of these things are so important for your immune status. And having a healthy immune system is key.
Yeah. I go back to my brokerage days. When you have a success rate of 90% in 3 months, that's unheard of, right? But see, my mind goes, what about that 10%? Could you just real quick respond to that, Maureen? Did something happen to them and they just didn't feel it?
Yeah, it's probably, people are at different stages, right, of their health. And some people are extremely healthy, like Dr. Ahvie, when they get involved. Now, he's very sensitive to energy, and so he could feel it right away. At my house, it took 6 weeks before anybody noticed anything. But there are people, including Alan Noble, who have never noticed any benefit from the product. It doesn't mean that it's not working. Let me tell you what, I boost my vitamin D level all the time, and I don't feel whether my vitamin D is in the toilet or if it's optimized, right? I don't feel a difference, but it's important to the way my body works.
Cool.
And that's true with redox too. It's just an added benefit that we feel, that increased energy and that sense of well-being and the better sleep and, all the other side benefits that come from it. The first thing that happened to me, and I wish we had more time to talk about this because it's really more Dr. Ahvie's wheelhouse, is my labs changed. I didn't feel anything, but there was a clear difference in my cholesterol panel. It was pretty amazing. And my doctor had accused me of starting myself on a pharmaceutical agent. And I was like, no, I don't know what did that. Well, the only thing that had changed was the redox, but we can get into that on another night.
Hey, Dr. Michael, real quick, can you drink too much of this stuff?
No, sir, you can't. You may not be able to afford barrels of it, but no, you can't overdose. But clearly, you want to dose well enough, and I think the longevity and to be really to just underscore what's been said. The aha moment in 1 week is only about 15%. So folks, you got to take a long view of this. It's like a lot of things in life. If I've had years of sleep deprivation, one good night won't make it yet. If I go out and exercise one day, that's not going to turn things around. My insulin resistance won't change after working out for 2 days. But consistency is important. How you take it is important. I'd love to hear Dr. Osler mention, what it can do for our dentition, for our gums, by properly kind of savoring it. Savoring it like a wine connoisseur, like a champagne connoisseur, like a wine connoisseur.
Like Maureen?
Yeah. But I think those things are important. But Jim, getting back to your question,
I put champagne in my Pellegrino bottle.
taking adequate amounts is important, but you really, I don't see that we worry about overdosing. And again, drug interactions, I'm not worried about. Definitely, 4 ounces a day is the recommended, but that's kind of for somebody who's healthy, maybe very young in life, whose deficiency in their native production of these wonderful molecules is not that far off of optimal levels when we're younger in our pre-adolescent time frame. So no, I don't think you can overdose.
Okay, so here's what I tell people. When you hit puberty, you drop down, and then as we age, it continues to drop down. Then when we start taking the molecules, we need to get back up here, but we don't know how long that's going to take, right? And we kind of recommend people drink a little bit more in that first 30 days, slowly, then build up to a larger amount to try to get back up to where they should be. Does that make sense, Dr. Herskowitz?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. Yes. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, and you think about the labs that were done at Torrent Labs and even at Dr. Neiman's, the university. I mean, they were doing 8 ounces.
Yeah.
So 8 ounces seems to be the number, at least I know for sure for Jim, he started at 8 ounces and he saw very significant importance at the 3rd day.
Yeah.
So if you didn't take enough and he started at 58, well, it would have took him longer had he just stayed at the maintenance with the 4 ounces.
Yeah.
So,
well, guys, Maureen, we've gone a little bit over because we had such amazing discussions here. Ahvie and Dr. Michal, thank you so much.
We really appreciate it.
Brilliant doctors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Very informative.
Next week, we do have Carolyn Hoffman and Buffy Donahoe.
Awesome.
Both doctors of osteopathy, phenomenal ladies. We haven't had them on in a while. And then the week after, we've got, I forgot the gentleman's name. That he's corporate, the one we talked about, Maureen.
Oh, yes. Chris Maston. Chris Maston.
Chris Maston.
Yeah, that'll be fabulous. Yeah.
Well, he hasn't confirmed yet, so I'm kind of bugging him to confirm. But then after that, we have Dr. Carmen Keith again. So
Yeah, she's
we've got an
fantastic.
exciting lineup coming up for you guys. We meet here every Friday. We really, really respect your time. I know we take a little bit longer, but because we want you to understand the depth of what we have. This is not something we can cover real quick. It's an in-depth understanding. We do the medical panel so that you can help justify it, or what's the word? Validate. Because when you've got these brilliant minds, not counting mine, but yes, Ann and the rest of y'all, you start to understand this is real. So, guys, thank you. Anything you want to close out with, Maureen or Ahvie?
I just wanted to thank Dr. Ahvie for being on and Dr. Michal as well. It's such a pleasure to have such brilliant minds share. And of course, Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
You know what? Yes, I'm just going to have to go study a little bit more, I think. I keep up with you.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and we'll
All right,
talk.
bye-bye.
Thanks, Ahvie.
Thank you, guys.